to another Blerdlines. Quick Blerdlines this week. It's just me, Cameron, your lead co-host, and I got with me.
This is Josh. What's good?
Welcome back, Josh. How you doing?
Chilling, man. Chilling. Just recuperating from the coconut festivities that are Labor Day weekend.
Tell me what that life is like, brother. I don't even know what that's about anymore. Give me the Cliff Notes version.
The Cliff Notes version is typically from about Wednesday or Thursday till Monday in New York. Labor Day is celebrated by Caribbean people as sort of it's still literal Labor Day because don't nobody work like Caribbean people. But at the same time, we've designated that weekend to celebrate Caribbean pride. So the short version, it started out in Harlem in the 60s, I want to say. And it grew to be where a lot of Caribbean people first immigrated. And then it just grew too big. Like it was nowhere uptown that could handle it. And so it moved down to Eastern Parkway in Brooklyn. And that's where it's been for about 40, 50 years at this point. Somewhere there about.
Oh, wow. That is crazy. Some of the videos you sent me, I was like, that is nuts. Everybody, you can hear my daughter Sage in the background if you hear
co-hostess with the mostest.
Yeah. Sage likes to join me on the pod from time to time. And she wants me to unlock the iPad so she can play with the camera and put it on shutter speed.
But yeah, it's been it's been something that's happened for the better part of about 50 years, maybe more at this point. I might be losing count.
Wait, how deep does it get over there?
Millions. Yes. The parade itself is millions of people. It runs from Crown Heights all the way to the museum.
Yeah.
With the edge of Crown Heights all the way down to the museum.
Yeah.
So if you've ever been on Eastern Parkway, both sides of Eastern Parkway, from the main island all the way through to the sidewalk near the main thoroughfare of traffic is all people from the beginning of Crown Heights down towards the Brooklyn Museum.
Wait, hold on.
Which is near Prospect Park.
And this is all happening in one day.
One day.
Cleanup is gonna be crazy.
Oh yeah, but so shout out to New York Sanitation. They kind of have it down before it gets dark, or by the time it gets dark, Eastern Parkway is open for business again for traffic.
Bet.
They have it at this point. They have it down, and it's just street sweepers and actual physical people with brooms, sort of shoveling stuff off either into the gutters or onto passing sanitation trucks. But they're quick. Within like an hour or two, Eastern Park is open for traffic again.
You know what's crazy? It's kind of the same, but when I was in Barcelona years back, I was out there. I just happened to be out there for a general strike.
Okay.
And for those who are unfamiliar with general strike, it seems like the natives were just unhappy with the wages and what was going on in that region. And I'm lying. I have been in one riot at that time prior to that escalation, and it was the LA riots, right? And so fast forward to the general strike, it looked like something you would see on the BBC or CNN, chaos, Molotov cocktails being thrown, police presence everywhere, the protesters or revolutionaries were out there forcing people to close their stores and not open. And so what had happened was that all went crazy for one day, right? The next day, I woke up the next morning after all that chaos. It started off with a mild march and it escalated to I don't want to say fire bombings, but it got a little crazy. So what had happened was after all that happened, the next morning, there was no evidence of a general strike on the street to be found. Jeez. The sanitation department did their thing. Like it literally looked like it was just a wild night of just partying and debauchery on a normal summer Barcelona night, right? But unbeknownst, if you didn't look at the news and you just came there that next day, you would have thought it was just chill and not known that it was chaos the previous day.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nuts. But I mean, that's a credit to, people outside of America. They don't play when it comes to certain things. They don't play when it comes to wages. They don't play when it comes to like, social services and what have you. They don't play them games. Like, I might. And you have to factor in the amount of taxes that people pay in Europe in general is usually bananas compared to what as much as we complain, they pay a pretty sizable chunk of their income goes to public services. So, if you're not getting what you're supposed to be getting, and I'm, shoveling all this money into the economy, and I'm not getting anything back, whatever that thing is that I'm supposed to be getting, you're not gonna have happy people, and they're gonna make it known.
Yeah, sorry, I was coughing. No doubt. I mean, it's crazy how, I'm not gonna get too political, but just how, like, one of the few things that our society does manage well is just like, stuff like sanitation, making sure the streets are clean and whatnot, and getting our act together outside of everything else that we have nuanced complaints about. But neither here nor there. It's just reminding when you said the streets are clean after a one-day festival with millions of people out there, and the next day it's clean as a whistle per se, or it just has the perception that the city takes care of itself for stuff like that. They're prepped. It's amazing, you know what I'm saying? So, but I mean, that's like a small, like, that's very interesting that we do that, So we can't have total chaos.
No.
All good. But anyway, I was going to say we're going to take a little detour from the regular Blerdlines topics of discussion. I know a lot of people tune into our podcast for, the latest news on media, games, what's going on in the film industry. We follow a lot of Marvel, DC, we're comic book nerds, at heart. We like to watch a lot of Star Trek, Star Wars, blah, blah, blah. This time we're going to take a little detour and talk about kind of what we saw in the sports world today. And I saw our new champion. I'm going to say black women have been holding down the tennis realm for a long time, but we have a new champion in Coco Gauff. Shout out to her. Tennis world was lit afire this weekend. There was a lot of things going on in the world. There was a lot of controversy about what does a world champion mean a few weeks back by, I think it was a sprinter, and he had made a comment about how NBA champions call themselves the world champions, but he said they're not the champions of the world. Which is funny because the FIBA team did lose to Canada for the third place. But
I thought that was hysterical on the heels of that conversation.
We can get into that. We can get into that as well. And so those are like the two things that came up. And you mentioned something about Djokovic. You want to start us off there?
Yeah. So literally as we're recording, not minutes ago, Novak Djokovic just beat Daniil Medvedev for his 24th Grand Slam title, and I believe his fifth U.S. Open title overall, which is the 24 is unprecedented. I think there was a woman in the 60s or 70s who was the last person to pull it off. Serena chased it for a little while, wasn't able to pull it off before she retired. But yeah, that's a major accomplishment, man or woman. Winning your 24th Grand Slam is just bananas, especially in the world of competition that we have today. Like that's no easy feat.
Wait, who is Djokovic's rival now?
That's tough to say. I don't know that anybody really. It used to be like the Nadals and Federers of the world, but they're way past their prime. So they're way past their prime, and I think he's figured out the matrix in terms of how to beat those guys.
Like, yeah, what is it? Nadal don't play on clay. So
basically,
yeah.
But yeah, I don't think there's anybody out there. Medvedev might be because Medvedev beat him
Oh yeah, I remember seeing it. It was a big deal.
Yeah, Medvedev beat him for a U.S. Open title, if I'm not mistaken, the year before last. So maybe Medvedev. You know.
So what I was going to say was, because in this sport, usually when the tennis greats achieve greatness on these records, they usually have a rival. But for some reason, I don't feel like none of the top people have rivals. Not that it knocks anything, because whatever they're doing and these records they're hitting is hard. Hitting the Grand Slam don't matter. It's a hard thing to accomplish. So
for sure. From what I see, I think because there's a changing of the guard happening. At least I'm not an avid tennis. My mom watches way more tennis than I do, but my observation is I think there's a changing of the guard happening. And so when you have a changing of the guard, you don't necessarily have those, on par playing against a peer type rivalries. You have like the young bucks coming up, who are sort of challenging for the top spot. But I don't think there are any. So at this point, I don't think that there are any like hardcore rivalries like that. I think the woman who Coco Gauff beat, Sabalenka, if she can get out of her head, like once she starts making mistakes, she kind of gets down on herself. And I think if she can figure out the mental portion of the game, that would be an interesting rivalry, because Coco is just like storming the castle right now.
What was it? The one girl before her that was making headwaves when she beat Serena? Was it Naomi?
Naomi Osaka was another one, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, kind of came, but then she just had a kid, so
yeah, she took time off to have a kid, so
yeah.
But she was there. She was in the stands for a couple of matches, so
she was in the stands, and the fact that also too, she had mentioned about the pressures and stress and taking a break,
which is real. I feel like the sport spectating public gave her a lot of slack for that for some reason. Mm-hmm. It's like, if I need a moment, I need a moment. Like, it's not. I mean, you can make the argument that the younger generation is softer, and they're not made of the same. Listen, tools are available. I think we've raised subsequent generations to sort of be in touch with their feelings and sort of speak whenever they have something going on. You can't have it both ways. You can't train these kids to be a little bit more in touch with their emotion and then, let them have it when getting in touch with their emotions means, all right, you know what? I need a second.
Bet.
So, I don't take anything away from Naomi Osaka doing that.
No, look, I'm not a pro athlete of any measure, but I do compete at certain levels at sports, and I do jiu-jitsu, and like there is some type of pressure you put on yourself or the pressure of sponsors or whatever it may be. We're humans, at the end of the day. A lot of people speak from the outside looking in saying, oh, you can just play this game, this kid's game, and get paid menus, just go out there and perform. Well, it ain't as simple as that. And I'm speaking from more of a micro level, I'm not on a big stage like they are.
Well, that, and you put it perfectly, that you're not on the stage that they're on, so the stakes are radically different. You have people that you're responsible to. You have, your ability to be able to be sponsored in some cases is dependent on your ability to rack up a certain number of wins. So, if Coco Gauff wasn't bringing it home every time, she wouldn't be on no New Balance commercials.
No, she's the face of New Balance, right?
Yes, she's one of
the faces of New Balance.
Yeah. So, you can talk all the talk you want to, but at the end of the day, I don't think people really are clued in, especially because tennis is not as popular as like an NBA or an NFL. You're not really clued into what's required of these athletes to do what they do and perform at the level that they need to. We're very clued in on all the background pressures of NBA players and, as much as one can be, and NFL players. So, we know that contracts are baked in with with performance incentives. Make it to the playoffs. What place you make it into the playoffs? How far you go in the playoffs? Like all of that. All of that is. I mean, at the end of the day, it's pressure throughout the season to perform, to get to point A, and then there's incentive to get to B, C, and D. So, we're aware of, as much as one can be, we're aware of what's required, but we don't know what these dudes, what tennis players are dealing with on the back end of playing tennis. Like, we have no clue.
Mm.
So, if she needs a second, go back to the original point. If Naomi needs a second, let her take it. Like, she, again, you can't have it both ways. You can't put these kids more in touch with their feelings and then deny them what they feel they need in order to be able to function once they are more in touch with their feelings. So, it's fine. If that's what she needs, that's what she needs. I don't think it makes her, if anything, I think it makes her smarter, and her career is probably going to last a lot longer as a result.
We will hope it lasts a lot longer because, again, the outside forces and the pressures of maybe sponsorship to go out there and perform, win, show up. And, she's a mom now,
mm-hmm.
family person per se. And if she does resume her career, there are certain expectations of a pro athlete, obviously. She has to qualify, rank, blah, 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 blah. But I was going to say, on the flip side, there is one person that I follow that feels like he's having fun and gives no shits about anything. Is that dude Gael Monfils?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
That dude is fun to watch. One of my favorite guys to take a peek at when he's playing because he's got a lot of quote unquote swag, brings a lot of him to the courts. And I just enjoy watching him play. And he's a brother, so I'm a support. You know what I'm saying? So
for sure. Another cat that's on the rise as of this weekend is Ben Shelton, young brother. Same deal. Like he plays like he's having fun. Like he just, it crumbled a little bit when he came up against the number one seed in Novak Djokovic, and I wouldn't say he got handled, but I think he just waited a little too long to turn it on. I think he was just nervous, and he's never made it this far before, and I think the game sort of just caught up to him. But
plus it's Djokovic, man, he's a juggernaut.
Yeah. And he will find a way to beat you. Like this match that just ended, like the dude who he was playing had a solid strategy. It just didn't work. Like he just wanted to outlast him. He made every point, every match, every set every point in every set, every game, every set, excuse me. In this game, drag out. And he basically tried to outlast him, and it looked for a while like he was succeeding. And then, the thing that I peep with Novak Djokovic that has made him a champion is he always finds another gear, no matter what. He always finds another gear. So, but yeah, Ben Shelton, that kid, he's serving like 149 mile per hour serves. Just haymakers. The kid's just he's like, I think 6'4", and just gigantic. The kid's just no joke.
Wait, how old is he? You keep calling him a kid. How old is this guy?
I think he's 19.
Oh, he still is a kid. Okay.
Yeah, he's a kid.
Yeah, there are no small tennis players. Like rare, Right. I also want. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
I also wanted to bring up track and field is back.
Oh, yes, sir. And back implies it was gone. I've been an avid track and field follower. So.
No, I follow, but like it hasn't. I don't want to stay on this topic too much, but I just remember track and field was, especially back in the 80s, early 90s, was like must-see TV, summer games. The whole family, the family dynamic would sit there and watch America. It was one of the few times where black folks be rooting for the United States in terms of pride and citizenship and whatnot. But like we would always tune in to see the Carl Lewis's, the Flojos, the
Michael Johnsons,
Michael Johnsons and whatnot, because we was dominant. And the Jamaicans was right behind us. And occasionally you have a Jamaican, do his thing until from my recollection, was your boy, the fastest man on the planet.
Oh, Usain Bolt.
Usain Bolt, right? And he just he was like, all right, we just who fighting for second, right? And then the women came out of nowhere. Well, they didn't come out of nowhere. It was killing. And the women was dominant. So Jamaica had it locked down. And then Sha'Carri Richardson, Sha'Carri Richardson came on the scene, was killing, then had the little mishap, and then bounced back. Seeing her bounce back, the women's national team beat the Jamaicans like on, just straight out beat them, right?
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people tuning in. Like I've been tuning in, but I've seen the populace start tuning in. I think it's dope. And I'm kind of glad that track and field is kind of taking the main stage for the last couple of months, you know what I'm saying? Where, in my opinion, back in the day, and now maybe I'm from the outside, maybe I'm just not peeping the everything else because, like I said, you watch. I know there's people who pay attention. I loosely pay attention, but I'm not tied in like I used to be, But it seems like it's kind of it's been on the tip of everybody's tongue lately.
For sure.
I found that as not only intriguing, but like dope to see, man, because it's awesome when you get black folks get together and we rooting for whoever black in the summer games, but we rooting for us. However, we do root for the Jamaicans on a certain scale. They just been kicking our butt, so it's kind of like, man, like
right, it's a love-hate love relationship.
Yeah, love-hate-love relationship. So it's always funny when the Jamaicans lose. It's like they shocked. I'm like, well, welcome to what we was feeling for like the last 20 years. Y'all was kicking our ass. So basically,
I mean, it's fun. It's funny because the way the Jamaican thing sort of played out was there was one runner who basically, I don't know if you remember Merlene Ottey.
Yep.
So her story is kind of wild because basically what was happening was she would get a wild card and basically bump out somebody who actually qualified. And so a lot of the Shelly Ann Frasers that you see nowadays from Jamaica were getting bumped back. And she was taking years off of people's Olympic careers and not medaling. And so the country would just keep putting her on, and giving her the sort of the what, like it's the equivalent of a wild card. I forget exactly what they call it. Exception. There we go. They gave her an exception for years, and eventually they stopped, and she beefed. And the Jamaican Olympic Committee was pretty much saying the same thing everybody else was saying, like, why are you blocking these very capable young ladies that are ready to come behind you and you not meddling? And so...
Bruh, wait, did she compete till like she was in her 50s?
Yes, she did.
Wow.
Late 40s or early 50s. I'm struggling to remember now. But, so what she did was she left Jamaica. I don't remember if she was already married to a Swedish dude, but either she was already married to a Swedish dude or married the Swedish dude after the fact and started running for. So she started getting an exception in Sweden because it's not taking anything away from anybody because Sweden runners are long distance runners generally, not sprinters. So they were just happy to have somebody in the category.
She found a loophole.
Basically. And so yeah, if you're married to somebody and you're a citizen of XYZ country, there's no reason for you not to be able to represent. So she goes and represents Sweden because she still wants to run. And that was the year that the Shelly Anns and all the other women who are now regularly representing and breaking records for Jamaica came up. And those girls lit that woman on fire. It was terrible.
They needed to do that, man. That was wild. Yo, Professor D.
Yo, I am here.
Into the building from the back door.
Glad to have you make it with us. I didn't think he was gonna make it, so we just keep it short and sweet. But welcome aboard. Welcome aboard, brother.
Thank you. And I didn't think I would make it either, but I'm glad that you guys were able to get on and talk about some stuff. Sound like you were in the middle of a engaging football conversation.
No, actually track and field.
Track and field.
So we had kind of touched on I brought up the fact that track and field is kind of taking it's been taking a back seat since the USA wasn't as prominent, but people still pay attention. But it wasn't like it was in the 80s and early 90s where it was like primetime TV, right? You know, we definitely came home to watch our track and field stars go at it, right? And I've said recently, I've seen the noise kind of rise a little bit with Sha'Carri Richardson, ups and ebbs and flows of being the new it to kind of being out and then back on it. And then she's beating the Jamaicans who've been dominant for like 20 years. And like one of the few times where you see black folks have a sense of American pride and wear stars and stripes and whatnot. And so it's been kind of cool to see. And I, for one, being a former track athlete, love to see this. You know, it's one of the few, I don't want to say forgotten sports. One of the sports that just doesn't get talked enough on mainstream stages. We always talk about the four major sports groups on talk shows and whatnot, but you know, we only pay attention to the track and field through the summer games, you know, because that's when it's highlighted the most at the Olympics or what do you call it? I want to say Pan Am, but that sounds like an airline. But I think it's Pan American Games.
There's the world. There's World Championships.
There's Pan. There's so many, right?
There's Empire State Games, which is basically all of New York colliding.
Yeah. So track and field is year round, but we only pay attention to the Olympics, right? You know. Yeah. So or when
you trip over it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rose Games is another one. Like there's a lot of big events. I mean, I only know them because my brother ran and could have potentially gone professional. So I was there a lot of those, or paying attention because he would tell me that they were coming on. But yeah, like track and field is a much overlooked sport, and I think they treat it the same way they treat the WNBA. Like, you know, if we put ad dollars behind this thing, nobody's, it's going to be wasted money because nobody's going to watch, and that's I don't think that's accurate. I think they just need to promote it more. The same way now, like, TNT has invested tons of dough in U.S. soccer, in broadcasting U.S. soccer. Like, they don't care who they're playing; they're going to broadcast a U.S. soccer game. So it's. I think if you approach it the same way, you're going to get the same results. But what do I know? I only work in television.
Yeah, maybe, but also, and I know very little about it. I have track and field. I wasn't an athlete, but I know I come from a family full of athletes. And, I think the thing with track and field is that it could cultivate that in the mainstream, but you have to change the sort of way that people think about it. And I don't think it's just the promotion as much as people who are the number of people who are devout sports fans or into all kinds of competitive or athletic exhibition are the ones that would be the main market, and they don't always translate into a mainstream larger audience because it's even though sports is very popular, it's still niche. I mean, I'm not saying it couldn't work. I'm just saying that it will probably be an uphill battle regardless outside of those seasons that you guys mentioned, the Olympic Games, just because it's not, you're not going to have, it's individuals. So, it's, I guess you have the team and everything, but I don't know. I just don't imagine that having a play in the mainstream. Soccer, yeah. Soccer or football, yes, but not. And even that is going to have it's still an uphill battle. I mean, MLS has been around for how long now?
MLS has been around for about 20 some odd years.
Well, I mean, MLS has been around. Well, the MLS as an entity been around for about 20 years, but we've had our own soccer league because we brought Pele over, right? And people said we didn't. If Pele couldn't do it, no one can do it. I always have, and I'm not gonna go too in depth to this, but I always felt like we don't have a LeBron James of soccer or Michael Jordan of soccer yet. We don't have the culture like overseas does. Like soccer is the biggest sport. worldwide. I've seen this with my own eyes, but we don't celebrate it or support it or like cultivate our youth to go in that direction. It's always baseball, football, basketball, hockey, et cetera, et cetera. But soccer is like, oh, that's what you play in high school. And so in my opinion, I don't feel like if we had one of those type of players that was homegrown or like was built here and then they went overseas, but comes home, plays in the MLS and at their peak, because we always get the past their prime players that come over, which is cool. Like I definitely like to see Messi or, Kaká, whoever, but like I want to get him when they in they like 20s, you know what I'm saying? Like not in their later 30s. So I always feel like if we ever had one of those type of players that we cultivated ourselves and brought up, and he was killing for the World Cup, and then comes back and he plays for like Portland or something. You're like, dude, this is crazy. We got like one of the best playing for our own league. Maybe it'll change, maybe not. I don't know. But that's
I think so. I think it's more of the inherent ethnocentric attitude that you dealing with in America, because Americans refuse to even call it football. To Americans, it's soccer, and Americana takes pride in American football, and that's why no matter what what happens in that sport, it's still considered the grand jewel, that and baseball, because those are American grown, and America has kind of had those stars for those, and basketball too. And you look at basketball, there are stars that come from the international circuit, but they're still looked at as not as big a player or as skillful as some of them. Obviously you have the exceptions, but they're still taking a back seat to the American. So I think it's just the Americanism that keeps other things from being popular. But I agree. I think if we had that, but it would have to be hitting on all of those cylinders that you named. It would have to fire on every single one of those for Americans to really pay attention, to really start saying, yes, I'm going to invest watching football games or soccer games, matches or whatever. It's interesting that this is a topic because yesterday I had an opportunity to attend one of the St. Louis matches, home matches. And I didn't refuse because I didn't want to go. I actually did want to go, but there was something else happening at the time. So, it's just interesting that, because I had said to my friend, I was like, man, this whole time I kept thinking that is in development. I didn't even think about that. Maybe they started playing already. It just didn't occur to me, and it didn't occur to me to even look for it. So, and I admit that that's the way that I prioritize football or soccer.
No, look, we can say football because we have a fundamental understanding of what football is. It's funny when you say we call it soccer, but overseas, I got being an American, and I went to World Cup, and one of the people from a different country who was following, I think they were from Belgium, and they was like, "Oh, you guys call it soccer? My bad." He was like saying football. I was I'm with it.
It's a big thing. I remember when I was in Europe, and they would say football, but then immediately realize, they're talking to American. Soccer is what I'm talking about. And I'm
they tried to double it down. Yeah, they tried to double it down for me, but I was like, nah, I follow the sport. I'm with it. I get it. So it depends where I'm at. If I'm in America, I'll just say soccer. When I'm with my friends who follow the sport, I'll say football.
I mean, football makes more sense for soccer than football for American football. Yes. How many times in that game in American football does the game come down to someone kicking or using their foot?
And I hate kickers. So
right. So that's what I'm saying. Like that's like the smallest aspect of American football, and yet Americans at large get kind of bent out of shape when they have to refer to real football as soccer. So it's so weird.
Before I segue into that, but it's just funny. Sorry, how we categorize things and try to make it simplified. That goes into a whole different nuanced conversations about race, gender, all that other stuff. It's just funny how when we look at we're set on soccer, but we can't accept that it's really football. And we do that with a lot of things in life in America.
Well, that speaks to the larger problem of undereducation in this country and the teaching of patriotism and nationalism in favor of teaching that the world is a one big mystery. Like there's so much to learn from other places and other cultures. Yes, they call it football because the whole game is actually played and depends upon people using their feet to kick a ball. Hence football.
Common sense, people.
To the point that we were making earlier about building a star around it, I was already sort of halfway digging them just because Samuel Eto'o was a beast. And somewhere in the middle of Eto'o's career, here comes this Argentinian 16-year-old from Barcelona's academy who was supposed to be they bring this kid on and dude just makes short work of grown professional men who've been playing the sport for years. They try to knock him over. They try to trip him. They try to foul him. And here is Leo Messi at 16 years old making these grown men who've been playing the game for years look like idiots. Same deal with Manchester United. How I came to be, I was a generalist. I liked football in general. But, how I came to Manchester United was as a dude named Dwight York, who happens to be where my family's from in Trinidad. And so, he makes it to the pros in England, and I forget what team he started. I think it was Sunderland. He started out playing, and then Sir Alex Ferguson makes the trade for this dude, and at the same time brings up Beckham, Keane, Giggs, whatchamacallit, that whole class of players who basically made Manchester United what it was. So, for me, like you were saying, it's the youth component. It's the start of all of those things.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's another big thing is that how young overseas and other places they start those players. That would never happen in America.
Child labor laws and all this other stuff.
That would never happen in America. Now in the 90s, in the 80s, maybe you could get away with it because as I was explaining to other Cam, that there was a joke about the wrestler Matt Hardy and his wife he sent me this video. Cam sent me this video. It's like the wrestler Matt Hardy's wife was saying is one of those POV things where she was like her husband was in sold out performing in front of sold out arenas when she was in grade school, and I was like, that's interesting, but that's a little deceptive in their case because those guys used to probably illegally wrestle on Monday Night Raw when they were like 14 years old. And because they started wrestling in 94 and they were still in high school. But just to say, if back then they tried to create a football star, they probably could have started them when they were like 14, 15 and nobody would have cared. But now it's like they just drop the whole dime on it. As soon as there's like a 16-year-old and they find out they're playing for an MLS team, it's going to be a big old thing.
We get an uproar when we got what was it, one pitcher that played for the Dominican Republic and he was like 30. He was posing as
I forgot it. He played for the Dodgers, right? Is this a guy that played for the Dodgers?
No. It was the Little League World Series, and it's always funny when there's some dominant pitcher and you're like, all right, let me see how old he really is, on the flip side. So we always we get bent out of shape on how age and age requirements and whatnot, or, if they're too young, they don't want, obviously in football, it's a grown man sport, but man, to be honest, man, some of these kids look like gladiators, and physically they look ready for the NFL, but there's a whole mental aspect of being prepared for that lifestyle and whatnot. And you're a kid, and you forget, you're like, oh, these are kids, you know what I'm saying? You wonder why they get in trouble. So there's a whole nuanced conversation about that.
Well,
but
we make a big thing out of adolescence, but in truth, adolescence is like a 20th century concept in terms of like when a child is considered adult versus when they're not, or whatever. That's something that emerged in the 20th century in terms of like marking it. Oh, it's at 16 is when should be ready to get a driver's license. And I think that's just, the conspiracy theorist in me is like, thinks that that's just a reason to keep older people in power, and have them not want to hand off the reins to the next generation. Because in truth, there's a thing like you can't run for president until you're 35, and yet all the presidents have been either geriatrics or knocking that.
Yeah, man, everybody looks like Palpatine.
Exactly, and they especially look like him after his fight with Mace Windu after a couple years in that office.
A side note, there is your Blerdlines geek thing of the pod. Yeah.
But before, I want to segue a little bit out of the topic of soccer, because there's two things I wanted to bring up. One, I finished this book called The Gone World, which I had told you guys I was reading. It's one of probably the best stories that I've read that involves time travel, and that didn't absolutely make me want to pull the few hairs I have on my head out. It's a really well done hard science. It's like if Robert Heinlein and H.P. Lovecraft, who I don't like, he's a racist POS, he's passed away for almost a century now. But
I was like, he changed.
Exactly. No. I just mean it doesn't matter anymore. He's dead, long dead. But it's like the story is very much like a Robert Heinlein meets H.P. Lovecraft, in that it really takes that science, that really hard science, and turns it into something dreadful and terrifying in terms of space and time travel and all that. Without going too deep into it, it's basically set in 1997, and the character, the protagonist, is investigating the deaths of this family who the father was a member of the Navy, and there's this covert organization in the NCIS that basically has created a space and time travel program called either Deep Time or Deep Waters. Deep Time is when they go to a possible future from the point where they are. They can't go to the past, but they can go to a possible future and do investigations. And basically the whole thing is that there's this event that occurs at some point in the future of humanity called the terminus. The terminus is literally when humanity ends, end of the line. And it's not a good ending. It's a very brutal, eternally damned ending kind of thing, but it's tied to science. It has something to do with a type of radiation. I won't go too far into it, but basically the whole thing is that in the middle of this investigation, they're trying to go to these different points in the future, these probable futures, to figure out different parts of the investigation. And each time they're going forward, they realize that the terminus has moved up closer. So at first it was 100 years from 1997. By the end of the book, it's like literally in 1997 when it happens. So, yeah, it's a really well done book. It's written by Tom Sweterlisch. That's a mouthful, but it was recommended to me by a coworker, and I sat down and it's a page turner. I couldn't stop reading it. It reminded me of also of the Southern Reach trilogy, which is most people will know that by the movie Annihilation. Very, very good science. So I picked up another book he wrote called Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And so I'm looking forward to that. This one is about, I believe, a dystopian society. Basically, the main character lives in a Pittsburgh that's in ruins, and the whole society is just awash. It's destroyed, civilization's fallen, but they have this thing called the archival, which is a VR thing where you can, like the Matrix, where you can enter into this archive of the past and kind of experience reality that way, because everything in the real world is shit. And so that leads this guy on this whole mystery of trying to figure out some intriguing, I think, murder something in the story. But looking forward to reading that one. But yeah, I'd highly recommend The Gone World. Tom Sweterlisch. I think he published it a few years ago. Excellent book. Excellent science fiction.
Oh, okay, so I got to get a few things off my chest. So I listened to the previous podcast because I wasn't a part of it, but I wanted to peep it. And two things have come up: time travel and your affinity for time travel lately. This is a record.
It hasn't changed though.
No. But I'm saying I like to bring hope, and you have given me hope for someone who hates time travel as much as I do, because of how writers can always screw it up, especially in.
Well, it's usually lazy too. It's always lazy. Usually incredibly lazy.
But to hear you say, of all people, this is back to back two things you like that deals with time travel, and I'm like, wow, okay. If to the listeners,
what was the other thing?
It was Star Trek.
You see, okay, so
all right,
count it as one thing in the Gone World. Star Trek that's more of a sentimental thing. I give them a slide. I let them slide.
Okay.
That one, it wasn't done bad, but it's Star Trek. They're always doing time travel. So I just sometimes, if it's just done okay and I'm not annoyed, I let them slide. But the Gone World is the one
that's still a win though in your case.
I guess so. In my world, that's a win.
Yeah, but
Star Trek is terrible where time travel is concerned. A, they overuse it, and B, they don't approach it from the standpoint of once you've traveled to either the future or the past, that point in time that you've now traveled to becomes your new you, because the perspective is supposed to be you. It's supposed to be oriented around you, the individual, and so wherever you travel to is new present. And I don't think I've ever seen in 60 years of Trek at this point. I don't think I've ever seen them approach time travel from anything other than, from the old standard of, if you travel to the past and you change something in the past, you've now changed the future. So when you go back to the future, which you're not supposed to be able to, like, it's all very muddled and very, I think they
rely a lot on the grandfather paradox and the butterfly effect, and those are the worst in concepts of time travel.
Well, not only that, but I think it's mired in very old science, because I think at one point that was a way that you considered how time travel worked, and that was considered to be probably in the 80s or 90s. That was considered to be the way that time travel operated. And, the more time passes and the more research that's done and, science uncovers new things and new ways of looking at things, you realize, it's purely based on your perspective. And no matter where you travel to, that is now because you've now moved from point A to point B, that is now your new present. It's always going to be your new present, no matter what you travel to, whether it's future or future, present, past, future, it's still your present.
Yeah, and I think those concepts, it's not that they were the established time travel or whatever theories. It's just that because they never really align with the laws of quantum mechanics, right? So you can't, even unless quantum theory was only discovered after the 80s, then most likely back then a scientist would have said the exact same thing, that there's no way that a situation like the butterfly effect or a paradox is possible outside of fiction, because in most cases it's I think it was Walt in Better Call Saul who had the best description of it. He I think it was Saul asked him if he had a time machine, what would he do different? And Walt says to him, he's like, first of all, what you're talking about, it violates all the laws of quantum mechanics, known laws of quantum mechanics. He's like, you're really just talking about regret. So if you have something that you regret, just say it. And that's true. If you think about H.G. Wells' story, The Time Machine, why does he build a time machine in the first place? To go back and save his woman from being killed at the moment that happens. A regret. But in most cases, when you're looking at time travel, like in the case of the Gone World, each time they went, so 1997 was called terra firma, meaning that that's the established point for which this traveler is sort of tethered to.
Sort of, they can, right, and comes back.
Yeah, and comes back to. But in every situation, there's an echo created, meaning there are multiple, depending on which part of, and it's hard to describe scientifically, but there are tears in the membrane of what we consider reality. And because of that, there can be certain quantum loops or quantum holes that are created that allows one individual from one reality to enter in the same one as you. And it's not that one person is prime or the other person is prime, is that these are literal or almost the manifestations of probabilities. So if there's this incident where one of the characters sees another version of themselves, and before it's explained, they think that someone brought that person to this reality, but in truth, there was again a tear in the reality, in a specific point, which allowed those people to cross into each other's reality. But they're all a result of the choices not made or made, lining it up to the multiverse theory, which is each choice we make or do not make branches off into its own separate universe, its own separate timeline. So I always make the joke that there's a universe somewhere in which I'm a military scientist. And it's probably true. And I only say that because at some point I considered a career in the military. Only difference is I made the choice not to. But if that is true, if fiction or otherwise, then yeah, there are several branches of reality in which I exist in. None of them will be impacted if I move forward in time, because I just create a whole new reality.
Well, the funny part about this is that I'm still stuck on the statement that time travel deals with regret most of the time when we see it. And now I'm going to be looking at that, anything with time travel with that aspect in mind, and see if that alters my opinion in good or bad on how I view things. Especially,
definitely.
Yeah.
Because I think it's at the bottom line. People in most fiction, the reason that the characters are traveling through time is to change something, and that's either something that even in Endgame, the whole mission was built on regret. The regret that they didn't do a better job at stopping Thanos, and so time travel allows them to change that in a certain way. They did it in a better way, in which they weren't actually changing the reality as much as borrowing from other timelines in order to do something in this reality. So that is why I'm not annoyed with Endgame, but it's those kind of time travel stories that at least puts effort into getting you to think about quantum physics or quantum mechanics, as opposed to just, like Tony Stark bringing up the Dersha problem and all these different theories that actually exist about if we are able or were able to generate enough power to propel us forward in time, what would that be like? Most of the time, it's going to be people being turned into mush, but fiction makes us think that won't be the case.
Very romanticized. What's the word? Idea, I guess.
Yeah.
And when we face the reality of it, it doesn't sell. It's boring. So.
Yeah.
Well,
and
if you test it against even light science, you won't have too many situations where most science fiction holds up because they're very well. I think I personally give Star Trek a pass just because things have been around since the 60s, and I don't think they're going to change things like how time travel works based on new discoveries, because you're opening up this can of continuity worms that I'm sure they don't want to screw around with. I'm sure there's a way to do it, but you probably are opening up multiple cans of worms, going against what they established as the way that it works. And, at this point, it's kind of understood that they don't really engage hard science in that way. So, it's fine. I don't think it's could they do better? Probably. But, I get why they haven't really advanced that aspect of science and science fiction.
It just depends on, again, the story. With Star Trek, like you said, it's not reaching for that. They just did it to have it simply as best as a general audience can understand. Obviously the science people in the audience is like bullshit, but at the same time, they're probably among the Trekkies, probably a smaller group of people. It's funny because in Veep, one of the jokes was the after they lose the White House, the chief of staff and the senior analysts they meet each other they run into each other at a publishing company, and the one guy is like, I'm trying to sell an adult, YA, a novel about an alternate reality where big guys always win and are the most attractive, and then the other guy is like, alternate timelines are a crutch for lazy sci-fi, e.g. Star Trek, with the exception of Deep Space Nine.
Wait, okay, so hold on. Let me ask you guys this. You guys are a little bit more versed in Star Trek than I am. Is it widely accepted by people who love or follow Star Trek to accept this fallacy of time travel and how the show has approached it? Have most Star Trek fans like, I know it's BS, but I'm just going to allow it because it's been around for such a long time. And why don't we do this for other shows?
Well, Star Trek, that honestly, I brought the Veep thing up just because it always makes me laugh when I think about Star Trek, because it's true, but at the same time, Star Trek does other science things really well. And a lot of the other science is very well thought out and well done in a way that translates to fantasy fiction without it being so fantastical that it's hard to believe, like Star Wars, or that there's no actual scientific explanation to it. It just happens, or it doesn't fall within the laws of physics. Star Trek focuses on the laws of physics. They bring up quantum mechanics and all that stuff. All that stuff is definitely embedded in the non-time travel stories, and even the time travel stories try to add some nuanced discussion about time travel. Again, there are things that are annoying about it because at times it feels lazy, but for the most part, they keep it consistently reaching for at least to be, I would say, 80% science accurate.
So they've earned a lot of equity.
Yeah. Oh yeah. A lot of.
I'd say so. Definitely. I mean, my experience is slightly different when it comes to time travel. I think it's probably a 50-50 split. You'll catch, some Star Trek nerds spouting how time travel works in the Star Trek universe and spouting it as gospel. Because a lot of what I found is a lot of Trek nerds are exclusively science. As far as science fiction goes, they're exclusively Trek nerds. They're exclusively Star Trek nerds and don't really engage a lot of others. So again, this is like about 50% of them don't engage other stuff that might push harder science. And so they think because there's so much in the press about people being inspired to work for NASA or become astronauts by way of Star Trek, and there's all this press about how they employ consultants and all this other junk, and Star Trek is based on real science. Yeah, sometimes. Most of the time, like Dee was saying, probably about 80% of the time, 75 to 80%. Yeah. It's accurate.
It's definitely accurate.
And I think they take liberties where hard science may get in the way of a story, or like I was saying before, there's an established canon that says science works. This particular bit of science works this way. And so it's convenient for the story. It's convenient for providing consistency in how stories are told from a scientific perspective. And, at the end of the day, it's not hard. It's not like the book that Dee was just talking about, where, a lot of it seems like all of what that book espouses is deeply based in hard science, or another show that's deeply based in hard science.
Yeah, The Expanse is very much the best example of
that's where I was going to get
TV series that does hard science. And the reason I say that is because the narrative is built around that hard science. They can't. The difference between Star Trek and The Expanse is that The Expanse is written as a novel to have a beginning, middle, and end, whereas Star Trek is more of an ongoing thing where it's like, we'll have these arcs of stories, but do you need to know this arc to enjoy this arc? Maybe not, And so with The Expanse, it focuses on all of these concepts, and they build the narrative around that, as opposed of trying to figure out how to make the science work for the fantasy.
So I was literally thinking of The Expanse and how much of that is prevalent to this conversation. But my other question is The Expanse one of the best examples of how they incorporate real science and they do it well and implement a story that doesn't be as abrasive to the people who really know science or have an idea of science? Like I mentioned Star Trek, and you say it's about 80%, but you guys allow it. It's earned a lot of equity. It's been consistent in how the ways it tells a story. It doesn't go above and beyond its means, and it's not obtrusive. The Expanse,
and it's mature. I think that's what helps, is that we're looking at adult characters who are handling adult situations as opposed to being childish or something stupid.
Yeah, I mean, if you ask me 10 years ago, maybe what's the best example of time travel? I'm going to say Back to the Future, just because it's just a nostalgic thing, but it's terrible, right? But, I look at things like The Expanse. I mean, even Endgame, for all its fallacy, has some semblance of telling a good story with time travel, but I do find it very lazy to cover up some plot holes and whatnot. But that's neither here nor there. But my question is to you guys, is what is one of the better examples, excluding The Expanse and Star Trek, that tells a good story of time travel using real science and not going above and beyond its means of like breaking the rules and going haywire with lazy storytelling? Like I think of things like Interstellar,
Oh yeah.
Interstellar is a good example. In fact, I would say Interstellar is probably one of the best film examples in which the concept of time travel is present, but not in the way that is traditionally presented. You have, because theoretically the belief is if there's enough power to create a wormhole or a singularity, that could allow for time travel. The problem is, can the human form survive that trip?
Both mentally and physically.
Both mentally and physically. And so what you see in Interstellar is that happens. He is pulled into a black hole, a singularity, or not a singularity, but a black hole. And he finds what's called the fourth dimension, where I like to say the visual representation of how time probably works, right? Everything is happening all at once. There is no tomorrow or today it's all happening at once. We just perceive reality linear, but it's like ships on a river. They're all there, but you can't reach across and touch that river. And sometimes it might just be that ship just might be passing you by. That's what Interstellar presented. And that's why I liked that as well, as opposed to in the Gone world that's present too, where you realize, the characters realize that it's not just one line or a few lines. It's all these things. Anything that's possible is happening. Any decision that you made one way, you made it another way in a whole nother reality. That's where the deja vu comes in and all that stuff. So, I think Interstellar. I don't know any other example that off the top of my head that I would call intelligent and uses hard science.
Yep, I'm inclined to agree. The scene in particular. Well, first of all, how long it took to get to where they were going. One, but then two, once this guy's character breaks that fourth dimension wall, he starts to experience time, like D'Angelo pointed out, and I thought was a genius move, experiencing time unfolding, things that he'd already seen, his daughter reaching into the bookcase, her growing older. He wasn't there for it, but he's still witnessing it, and he's witnessing it from, I thought it was an interesting plot point to have his POV, or at least chunks of his POV, be from behind that same bookcase. I thought that was a really interesting visual tool to sort of orient the viewer and root them in, okay, this is the place where this thing is happening, but note that the kid's getting older and she found the watch and, she's pulling out books from that bookcase. And each time she pulls out a book or finds something in the bookcase, she's much older. And it's out of order. It doesn't happen in any.
And also he's there. Exactly. Right. And he's there in both spaces at both, because right before, he's the one reason she looks at the bookshelf, but he's about to enter that other part of him or the other version of him is about to enter that room with her. And because that scene happened early in the movie where they were trying to figure out what was going on right there. And it ends up turning out that, again, it's all happening at once. He's in that space, but the visualization of that was good as well, because you don't have any gods or any aliens. It's just, this is the physical space. This is the membrane. This is the matter in which you can see all these different realities that have been created based on decisions and choices that these sentients are making, all in this universe, all in this space and time continuum.
You know what is when we break the whole aspect of everything happening all at once, it doesn't matter how much technology or how well written a story is, you will never simulate the true feeling of that in a movie.
No.
Or, you know what I'm saying? It's just like, even though we're telling a movie and we can break the rules and kind of get you in that perspective, you'll never really feel what it feels like if having everything happen all at once and being cognizant of it. And Interstellar does a good job of trying to get you as close to that as possible.
Yeah, and I think Nolan's use of scale and scope in that scene is also frightening on the big screen, because I couldn't imagine being suspended in that in that space and seeing all of that and not just be overwhelmed and probably just drop dead from my thoughts alone.
Right. It would definitely fry every sense that you have to be able to have the memory of experiencing said thing, but then watching it from another POV all over again, and then witnessing events that you haven't seen before, and having all of that happen out of order, because your brain is going to try to make linear sense of it, not realizing probably for a while that you're watching these things out of order, and to be able to process that in your linearly trained brain probably would fry you. And I think they do, and so I forget what movie it was, but there's some movie where they engage in time travel, and it's sort of like a mishmash between Star Trek, go back in the past, change things, and then come back to the present, and things are different. And a version of the Interstellar thing where it's sort of you sort of experience things out of order. And the guy, I wish I could remember what it was, but one of the guy who's guiding this new person who's never time traveled before said, you got to have a totem. You got to have a thing that tethers you to your original timeline. Otherwise, you're gonna go insane. And so
that's not Nolan's movie, is it? Because when you say totem, that's what takes you back.
I don't think
it's not Tenet, right? That's not Tenet. Tenet was more entropy.
No, not Tenet. The one before that with Jordan.
Inception. No, it's not Inception.
No, it's not Inception.
Was it Inception?
Well, when you speak of totem, that is the first thing
that is exactly what I'm thinking about. Actually,
it was Inception. Yeah. Inception wasn't time
Inception
travel.
wasn't time travel. Yeah,
but there was a bit of that, to your point, involved, because the way time works in the dream space is different than in reality. Whereas this is how Cobb and Soto spent 70 years in the I forget what they called it, limbo. And 70 years in limbo, which was only a few moments past on that plane.
Yes, so it definitely was Inception. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And going back to the everything all at once, the other part of that in our linear minds with Fry is the fact that you would also see all the probabilities, meaning you might be looking at something that could happen, not necessarily based on a decision, and then several other things that could also happen based on that same moment, that nexus point in your life. So overwhelming is an understatement of being in that situation. I don't think any human being could survive it.
The brain is not designed to handle that kind of information in that order.
So let me pause this. So when we think of this, when you said the many possibilities of what could happen, it reminds me of a video game, Ragnarok and the Fates, or just God of War. And you talk about fates in Greek mythology, and they give you, and a lot of movies do this, where they give you, oh, this is going to happen, but they don't explain to you it's one of many possibilities that can happen.
Right. Because it's all based on the choices. Yeah. Yes,
it's based on choices, and the reader or the viewer goes in and say, well, if they do this, this is going to happen. Not necessarily, because there's so many little nuances that the director does not tell you, or you don't find out until later based on the decision that was done. And then you understand the whole concept. Well, because we've seen this trope before, we start to have a familiarity of what, and we see it's like, okay, we understand there could be some possible things that could happen. It's happening in Loki, in the multiverse and whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Certain things, one action causes a reaction. You do this is going to happen. If you do this is going to happen.
Yeah, it's a chain, because you don't exist in reality by yourself, right? So even though we think the certain decisions that we make for ourselves only impact us, that's not true, right? Now, I'm not saying that one decision to use the bathroom or not use the bathroom at that time is going to destroy the world, but
depends on what you're doing in the bathroom.
It depends on who you are. That's true. It definitely depends, but it depends on who.
What did you eat before you went to the bathroom?
Exactly. Well, one of the things, that's hilarious. One of the things in the Gone World that I liked was that the main character, she went to one possible future, 2015, 2016, and one of the characters that she knew in 97, she saw him, the older version of him. He remembered her. He's like, oh man, you don't look like you aged a single day. Like, what are you doing for you? Obviously she came from, but she couldn't tell him that. And so, so what ends up happening is, just to make the long story short, in that reality, the two of them hook up. They become real like lovers, and during the time where she spends there, but she knows that's immaterial, because as soon as she leaves that reality, in her mind, she thinks it's going to blink out of existence. Because it's only a possible future. It's not, she's going to go back to 97, in which none of these things, none of the decisions that were made to bring them to that point have happened yet, right? So in one reality, she's they're lovers, they're together. He helps her out, but there's something weird about him that she can't put her finger on, based on things that happened to him over his FBI career. She goes back, and then she comes forward to that same year again. Things have changed. Now he's still in the FBI, and the thing that happened to him happened to someone else, and so on. So now she's like, man, and then so they're like, she can't even apply any feelings that she had for him in that other possible future to this version, because this version is totally different. Right. It's totally different. And so that was fun for me reading that, because as an active reader, I'm sort of looking at the clues that the author is leaving about the decisions, that one decision that would turn him this way versus the one that would turn him that way. And it was the same point. He just made a different decision in both realities, and they led him to different directions. One, he's like a bum living in the woods, and the other, he's like top dog at the FBI.
Not necessarily time travel related per se, but Foundation, which I'm loving as I watch this show.
Wait, that's on Apple TV, right?
Yeah, it is.
I got to sign up for the free trial.
Bro, they give you 3 months. You can bang out that show and Ted Lasso in 3 months.
I like how you throw Ted Lasso in there.
Okay, man, those are the thing that. So Ted Lasso, Silo, and Foundation are the three things I'm like, these are phenomenal shows. It's not even like this was cool. All right, I'm gonna just bust the 3 month trial, and then I'll be done with it. Like, I really dug Ted Lasso in a way that I was not prepared for. Silo, same deal. It starts out a little slow, but gets moving really quick, and before you know it, you tear through that entire series. Foundation is hitting me the same way. There's something about Apple TV shows that D and I were talking about this the other day. Just a quick aside. It seems like they're shooting for quality over quantity. Like I don't think they're shooting to have the number of shows and movies that a Netflix or a Hulu has, but the shows and movies that they do have, so far, like, I almost am starting to feel like I could blindfold myself, point to something, and just watch it, and it'll be good. Like, they're not, I don't want to say they're no fail, because I'm sure there's probably something I won't like. I wouldn't put that pressure on anything, but I gotta tell you, like, they're really just firing on all cylinders. And so Foundation being one of those things, Foundation, D and I talked about this a couple weeks ago when I first started watching it. Foundation is less about, it doesn't really have a time travel element per se, so much as the passage of time happens a very particular way. There are characters that are put in stasis, and so life sort of just passes them by. And but the one thing that does happen is they talk about predicting the future, and not necessarily by way of prophecy or someone travels to the future and then comes back and says, hey, man, if you buy Apple stock in 1983, you're going to be a millionaire by the time you get to 2023. it's not one of those. It's
the actual way you can predict the future with math.
Yes. Everything, Asimov posits that everything is possible if you utilize math the way, if you utilize math and sort of twist it towards the direction of the thing that you want to discover. So if you want to predict the future, use math. Math will tell you everything. And so you find that over, I think at this point, it's like 1,400 years from the point of the first episode. Everything that's supposed to happen, with the exception of a couple of outlier events that sort of muddy the equation. The things happen exactly the way that they've been mathematically predicted. The outliers sort of intervene and interlope, and they turn left instead of right. And when you recalculate the math based on what that outlier has now done, you are now able to repredict a new set of outcomes. And that's really the whole show. It's about predicting mathematically with a certain level of mathematic precision, being able to predict specific outcomes. And those outcomes pretty much happen the way that the main character is like, I'm not going to get into how he hears 1,400 years in the future. He's not quite alive, but I won't get into how he appears later on in the future. But there's a line of characters who basically clone themselves. And so they retain the knowledge of the previous version of their clone. So 1,400 years in the future, this clone and the version of the guy who created the way to predict the future meet up. And he's like, yo, I've been right all this time. Y'all denied what I was telling you. And I've been with a couple of exceptions, because you can't predict what people will do to mathematic precision always. But for the most part, I've been on point, and you've been wrong. So, you might want to give me a little leeway, a little credit here. I'm going to tell you what happens after that, or who says what. But I gotta tell you, it's a really impressive show, and it's a credit to the genius of Isaac Asimov, who is the author of the foundation book that the show is based on. And
which I'm going to read before I watch that show.
I think after this season, I might have to do it with you, because and that is a testament.
After this season, I'll probably be on book 5 if there is a book 5.
The last time a show that was based on a book, two shows that made me double back and go read the books. The Walking Dead was one, and the other one was Game of Thrones.
And one was a waste of time, and the other one, I'm joking. No, I'm saying I was just joking about
season 2 of Walking Dead, when it was still a viable show.
Oh, I don't want to open that can of worms, because I'll start chopping up.
We both agree that show is trash. Yeah.
Okay. So Josh, the way you're hyping this up is on par with how you hyped the Expanse.
I haven't watched all of it yet to be able to say that it's on par with The Expanse, but it's way up there, bro.
Well, I'm just saying, you didn't watch all The Expanse when you told me and convincingly told me to watch this because Thomas Jane was in it, and I was like, bruh. So
yeah, I don't think
that continues to make me laugh.
I'm not saying it's The Expanse. I'm just saying the level of hype.
Yeah, he's saying not all time.
Yeah.
I think Foundation is way up there. I don't know if it's top 5.
I'm not comparing.
No. He's not saying that.
I'm not saying
is it? He's gauging the level of it. Yeah.
Yeah, because you don't like this. This is eerily similar to Expanse talk. When you talked to me offline and was I need to watch this.
There's no question you should watch that show.
Okay, that's all I need to hear. Because if this is good, if I watch this season or one, how many seasons so far?
I think they're in the middle. They're coming towards the end of season 2. I think next week is the finale.
Do I want to read the books or do I want to watch the show first?
The books aren't that long.
Are they not?
No, not it depends on which version you get. There's a collected version that has all. I think there's like between 3 and maybe 5 books that Asimov wrote, published for the Foundation. I know there's at least 3. But the books, I have them each individually. They're about this thick. Each book.
Okay.
Probably Asimov doesn't. Even iRobot isn't that long. And
no, iRobot's not long.
That movie is totally off the fucking mark with iRobot.
Yeah, come on, that's not.
It's not even close to being what, except for a few the names of the scientists or whatever.
Okay. All right. So I'm gonna make a commitment. I'm gonna read Foundation.
I'm gonna read it too.
I don't know if I can wait long enough for them to put out another season of the show before I start reading the books.
No, let's just have a handshake agreement. We're just gonna read it, and we're gonna.
Oh, definitely.
I think it's worth doing both anyway, because at the end of the day, the adaptation is the adaptation. As we've said many times on this on our pod, we don't judge them as one thing. No. Foundation Apple TV series is one thing versus the novels that were published and written by Sir Isaac Asimov. So I think it's worth exploring both if you can find the time. So I'm just particular about reading the books first, because obviously that's where it all started. So
is he knighted? Was he a sir?
I'm pretty sure Isaac Asimov was knighted. I gotta confirm that, but I'm pretty sure he's.
Nope, they don't have him listed as sir.
Okay, so maybe I'm thinking of not Isaac Asimov. I was thinking of Sir Arthur Clarke.
Ah, okay.
Pretty sure
Arthur Clarke. Asimov is American, so
yeah. Well, there's been Americans that have been knighted before. There's some Americans that have been knighted.
There's a joke in there, but that's gonna get me
let's not
off the air.
Let's not do that.
Kick me off the air.
But Asimov being one of the godfathers of modern day science fiction, along the lines of a Frank Herbert and men of that writers of that ilk, not men.
Robert Heinlein, don't you forget Robert Heinlein. Robert Heinlein is the one that first started really doing hard science. Like he is the father of like hard science in terms of making sure that it's accurate in his stories. And
my bad.
Also, Robert Heinlein.
But yeah, unless those guys are considered to be the fathers of modern day science fiction. How you take iRobot and get what you got with that dreadful Will Smith movie is just beyond words.
Yeah, because it's Hollywood. It ain't meant for people who kind of are pedestrian,
I guess. But I will say this: if you're familiar with Asimov's work, you also know that you're getting that at some point you're getting a reference to robots, and this is no different. And the way that they do it, oh man!
All right, you've sold me. I'm sold.
Oh man,
I'm definitely sold. So I'm gonna be give me a dummy subscription for 3 months and go through it.
Yeah. You'll gun through it and probably watch other stuff.
Bet. Yeah, man.
The three things that I can recommend without blinking on Apple TV is definitely Lasso, definitely Silo, and definitely this. The first two, Lasso's done. That's a completed series. Silo, I think just they banged through season 1. And I think they're getting ready to end season 2 with Foundation. But Foundation is wow. Pleasantly surprised. I did not expect it to be as good as it is.
So staying on this sci-fi tip, I wanted to bring up one more thing because I told you guys that I was doing something, and that something was I actually purchased an Xbox Series S, and so that I can play Starfield. I see your look. Just hear me out. Hear me out. Listen. I'm within my 90 day where I can return that and get a full refund. So Starfield was free with the Game Pass. So I'm like, okay, let me check it out. Why not?
The audience cannot see the look of disdain on Cam's face right now.
No, and it's not because he bought an Xbox. It's because I've been trying to get this man on Discord.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I knew that was the look. That was the reason why. And I'm not going to say that after this, I'm going to sign up because I say that every time and I never do. So I'm just going to put it in my mind, at the top of my mind, I got to sign up.
I don't want to press you into Discord. I'm just saying get on there so when we get a game that we talk about, we can have that channel. You know what I'm saying?
You're right. You're right. Absolutely. And that's why I want to do it because I also want to do Twitch as well. There's some people doing that I think I want to bump heads with, but Starfield is actually it starts off kind of similar to all of Bethesda's games. It's a muted protagonist that is that you create, give them name and look and all that stuff. It's set. It reminds me a lot of The Expanse. It's set about 200 years from present day. The humanity has basically stretched out into the stars and colonized it so much so that some humans alive don't believe that Earth actually exists or that we come from Earth, which is a concept that I love. But when you first start off, as soon as you hit orbit, you have to fight pirates, and so you're literally having to learn how to control the ship, how to fly the ship. It took me a while. I was fighting that dude for a while, and he had almost destroyed me because he damaged my shield. But you can route power to other parts of the ship, so like you could take power from the life support and route it to the shields. That I love because that, as Josh know, that's like Star Trek,
101.
Even like it's fun. And I'm not a first person fan, so I always switch to third person. And it felt like The Expanse when I switched to third person. It's not what I love about space. The best space stories is when visually there is no horizon. It's not oriented because it's space. There is no horizon. Up is down, left is right. So the camera moved like that. So there were times where I couldn't see the dude. He's like shooting me. So I'm thrusting, like trying to catch up with him, and I'm forgetting, this fool is right behind me. So I cut the engine and just literally use the thrusters to like turn the ship upwards, and then see him like use his engine to try to get further away. So I hit the boost. It allows you to adapt in the middle of the battle. It's fun, man. I'm not gonna lie. The little bit that I play as a science fiction fan and a hard science fan specifically, I like the mechanics that game is working with. And I think, again, it's like it is. People say it's Skyrim in space. I know how you feel about Skyrim, but it is similar to that. But it gets away with it because, again, you're working with space. Like it's not the medieval high fantasy setting. It's like you being an explorer, being all these different types of things that you usually see, these archetypes, these character types, bounty hunter, pirate, outlaw, like things like that, scavenger, miner, like things like that. And there's obviously a main arc as well. So I don't know if I recommend it because honestly, other than that game, I still find the Xbox to be so much whacker than the PlayStation.
Let me intervene real quick.
Go ahead.
Yes, getting an Xbox does irk my nerves. However, I think Starfield is one of those games that if you were going to buy an Xbox, I think this would be the time to commit.
Yeah.
I was going to recommend this game to you because I haven't talked to you about games in a minute, but I thought Starfield was right up your alley because it does not only remind me of Skyrim, but it reminds me of Red Dead Redemption 2, where you don't follow the story so much as you can get lost in the open world.
Yeah.
Quote unquote, doing very nuanced things. I found myself not being able to be Red Dead Redemption because I was looking for the perfect bear pellet. It took me 3 years to beat that game. You know what I'm saying? And
you could lose yourself in that game. Yeah, like literally.
And another reason I thought this was right up your alley is because I just recently seen a clip of how, what do you call it when the shell casings come out the gun? What is that term?
Why am I blanking on it? I know it.
Well, whatever the term is.
Just called shell casings.
Shell casings come. Yeah. So there's science behind what happens when you're in zero gravity versus gravity. Pay attention to how your shell casings go out the gun. On Earth, they come out and drop. But when you're in space, they kind of float up. Those are little details that I think you would what's the word? Like, for lack of a better term. You see those little nuances and details, and they put that much effort in such a game. I do want to play it eventually, but I don't have time. That is a life stealer right now.
It is. And that's one of the reasons why when I started it, I've started it, played like the first part, and then this happens to me all the time. I stopped. And like, I probably will have to find a time. It's probably going to be like around the time where Christmas is and I'm taking vacation and all that stuff.
Right.
And then I just take a day, and because when I play, I'm also allowing myself to gain inspiration because I'm a writer. And so like this allows me to open up, to break through that fog of writer's block or whatever, is because especially this, because it, like you said, there's so many nuances. Like one of the things when you go to each planet, a rule of thumb is to jump to try to see what the gravity is like, because each planet has different gravity. And like you could be with a planet with like 0G or like very, very low gravity, or a planet that's like super duper, like it's pulling you down. Like the gravity is like, it's struggle to walk. You know what I mean? Like that's the kind of scientific detail that makes, I think this will probably be like a game of the year candidate or whatever, because it's just that detail with the science and its projection of where humanity might be 200 years from now, if we're still around.
This reminds me of the long ago and the far away when I was still playing games. There's a PC game for Star Trek Bridge Commander that sort of had the same, not the same, but very similar options where like, all right, you're in the middle of a firefight or you're in the middle of doing whatever. The thing is like, not even a firefight. Let's say you go into a nebula and the nebula is radioactive. You can reallocate system resource, ship resources. You can boost the shields, but if you're going to boost the shields, it means you have to take from warp power. That sort of thing. So you're constantly playing this balancing game. In addition to being the captain, you're also tactical. You're also communications. You're also engineering. And so part of that is you are responsible for allocating system resources, repair, damage control teams. Like, it's pretty detailed for a game that came out in like 99, I want to say. It was pretty damn detailed.
That game came out, I think, in like the late 90s or early 2000s. Yeah, definitely.
Right on. Well, it seems like we our pod about nothing turned into a little something, and we had a wide range of topics that we went from. We're going to end it off here with our final words, and if anybody does not want to go first, I will.
Recently,
Yeah, recently I am on the very, 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 very late bus. I just watched Invincible and I was blown away.
Okay.
Holy Nikes.
I think that was one of those things I told you to watch too.
I mean, it was on my plate. It's just one of those things that I just, for some reason, kept pushing. I didn't have time. Games come out, busy with life. I knew it was always there. Yeah. Always there. I was like, I'm going to eventually watch it. I've been seeing memes, GIFs, clips of it on Twitter, my social media feeds. And I always was like, what is this? What does that mean? But I kind of had an idea what was going on. And I had an idea what the story is about, but I had no idea what the story was about.
Yeah.
Because episode 1 goes off the rails near the end, and I'm not going to even spoil it. I don't even care how long it's been. I'm not going to spoil it,
bro.
It's been like 5 or 6 years.
Statute of limitations.
That's how long
it's like no. Like it was what 2018, Josh. So like 5, yeah, like
during the pandemic,
years.
Maybe.
No, it was before the pandemic. Nope. Actually, wait.
It was during the pandemic.
When season 1 came, so it had to be 2019 then, because I remember watching it several years ago, and I've been wondering when the next season was going to come because it's been a while.
I think next year is when they're.
Well, I for one, I am glad I was late, because to watch this when it came out and have to wait this long, man. Listen, all I know is 2021. Okay.
So, wow. So just 2 years.
2 years. So I like The Boys. I like The Boys comic even better. This, this is more graphic than The Boys in certain aspects.
I agree. Yeah, that's fair.
I think
as far as animation.
Oh yeah, definitely. Because I would say I think the violence is
in The Boys is crazy.
The violence in The Boys is a little bit more slapstick versus this, which is a little bit more purposeful.
Yeah. And I like it. It's done well.
Quite so.
Obviously, there are parallels between The Boys and Invincible, but everything about this show is awesome. I couldn't trust anybody because everybody had a hidden agenda. Every episode, it was like, what is going on? Why? What? Like, I thought this was going this way and it's going another way. And by season end, I was just like, I need more of this. And I want to apologize for everybody that sent me recommendations for this show and not blowing them off, but just saying I'll get to it eventually.
But you delayed as long as you did.
Yeah, I was tripping. Invincible is up there. It's one of my favorite shows. I may even give it a rewatch, just to see if I miss anything. And I definitely going to read the comic, which I didn't know. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't Invincible comics show up in episodes of The Walking Dead because there was like a friendly relationship?
There was. Well, no, because Robert Kirkman wrote Invincible as well.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, that's the connection. There, and it happened in like the later season. The only reason I knew is because I went back and skimmed through the last season, literally skipped scenes, did all went from beginning and just saw what happened at the end. But I saw one character was reading an Invincible comic book, and I was like, oh, see, Kirkman shameless.
I think it happened twice. Once further down after I stopped watching, but when I peeped it was right after the jail, where Rick is kind of jammed up, like he's physically had the crap beaten out of him, and they leave the jail, and then Carl is sitting on the rooftop eating like I don't know a can of chocolate or whatever it was, butter pudding, right? And so one of the scenes. He discovers a treasure trove of comic books, and one of the comic books is an Invincible comic.
That's right. And then actually, it's funny you brought that up because years later, it's his sister character who they show, and she's reading an Invincible comic book.
Oh, that's nice.
Whatever. She shouldn't have lived as long as she did.
Well, that's a whole other ball of wax. Her is one of the most traumatic things I've ever experienced reading the comic book. I got to tell you.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I was gonna say Invincible is definitely was worth my time, and I binged it in like 2 days. So kudos to
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I've been literally watched one, and then I watched the rest the next day.
That's like what, 8 episodes, right?
It's not long. It's not long.
10,
I think it's like 10, but it's not. They're not long. It's a work shift.
Yeah, they're yeah. You can get through those pretty easy. Yeah. Final word. I was just gonna say I'll give my final word. I just encourage people to pick up a book every now and then. But no, really. No,
that's real.
Yeah, no, it is real. I'm serious. Reading is fundamental. Read. It helps your brain. It allows you to stay young.
Yep.
You know,
it slows down time.
It slows down time. Read more. Check out Starfield if you have an Xbox. And
no, I'm just playing.
I agree, but Starfield is an exception.
Yep.
And check out the writings of Tom Sweterlisch. He has proven that he's a pretty good author, good science fiction. If you kind of like gritty and hard science, but with a very nuanced manner of storytelling, very nuanced prose. Yes, The Gone World I recommend first because I actually read it. And I hope to see it one day. I think Apple TV will be perfect for it. That's a freebie for those listening.
Hey, 2 Apple TV promotions in one episode.
Josh?
Final word. What D said, read. Read. And also, back to our original topic. Just experience things outside of your, fear, man. Like track and field is a world event. Soccer is, football is a world game. Like you'd be surprised what opens up for you if you take just those 2 things on and really immerse yourself in both sports. It opens up a lot of stuff from an international perspective, just in engaging those 2 sports and engage them deep the way that you would engage, the NBA or the NFL. Engage them deep, learn players' names, where they from. You'll be shocked at what opens up for you and how much you'll learn. And just, don't be that American. Don't be that American. Just experience things outside that, learn about stuff that's not on your block. And that's, I think I can end it there.
Well said to all the individuals. And all right, gang, that will wrap it up. And this has been another Table of Truth, and we are signing out. Peace.